Good morning to everyone from Utah Valley University Office for Global Engagement. I'm your host, Baldomero Lago, and today I'm welcoming you to our first program on Taking Action. Taking Action is a virtual discussion among professionals, experts, students, community members to address the relevance, implementation, and promotion of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. Just as a preamble for everyone to understand, the Sustainable Development Goals are a universal call to action to end poverty, to protect the planet, and to improve the lives and prospects of everyone everywhere. The 17 goals were adopted by the all United Nations member states back in 2015 as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which set out a 15-year plan to achieve these goals. We're currently working on what is known as the Decade of Action, the last 10 years, now in 2021, the last 9 years before the main goal in 2030. These are good goals. They are good values that will make our world a more prosperous and peaceful. There are 17 goals, and they range from poverty to quality of education, to zero hunger, to gender equality, to innovation infrastructure, to have a better water, looking at climate action, peace, justice, prosperity. You're more than welcome to find all this information as you search the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Again, the 193 member states, all nations jointly agree to support this initiative. Then within 15 years, we will make a difference. As an academic institution, we are associated to the United Nations, and it is our responsibility to promote the sustainable goals, to what we call taking action on those goals, to educate our students, our community on all these areas of improvement. Every year, during the month of July, there is a venue called the High Level Political Forum, where each government presents their current updates on how they are fulfilling these goals. I'm originally from Spain, and as I travel before COVID, pre-COVID, throughout Europe, it was very common to see what nations are doing to implement these goals. From the state of Utah, we continue to do this as an academic institution because we are centralized, we are equipped with individuals that are experts in all these fields. And today, I have the great honor to have called what I consider good friends, wonderful peers, colleagues, not only here in the state of Utah, but also an expert in the University of Turku in Finland that she's joining us today. They're all educators, and we also have a wonderful student that she's going to become an educator. And today we are planning to speak on goal number 4. I thought that being the very first taking action, may as well let's talk about education since we're broadcasting from an academic institution. Goal number 4 discussed the issue of having the responsibility of ensuring an inclusive and equitable quality education. And it is our responsibility to promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. During this session, I encourage those that are following live to submit some questions in the Facebook comments window. And if time permits, I will address some of those questions. Today, I have 4 wonderful guests in this panel who represent education, and they're experts in the field, as I mentioned. And at this time, I would like to introduce them. Actually, I'm going to have them introduce themselves. Tell us just briefly where you are, what you do, what your experience or your practice are. And so everyone that will be following these proceedings will understand your background and your input. So we're going to go ahead and welcome our foreign friend that is so far away. Is evening in Turku, Finland right now. So Anu, thank you very much for joining us. And please let us know a little bit about yourself and then tell us, just introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Baldomero, and thank you for inviting me. And good evening also, because it's 8 p.m. local time here. So I'm Anu Warinowski, and I come from the University of Turku, Finland. And some words about our university. For shorten, it's UTU. We just had its 100-year anniversary last year, so we are pretty old. Sustainability is something that we are really interested in. The goal of our university is to make the principles of sustainable development a comprehensive theme in all levels in our university. And we are also committed to become carbon neutral by 2025. So I'm working at UTU in the Faculty of Education in an administrative position as the head of faculty development. I'm originally a class teacher, and I have worked almost 15 years as a teacher in the city of Turku. So once a teacher, always a teacher. And I started working at the UTU in 2007. And after finalizing my PhD dissertation, I was working as a teacher educator in initial teacher education. But thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Annie. I know we really appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening in Finland, this morning here in Salt Lake City, we're in Utah. And I'm going to have Dean Ilieva, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Baldomero. I am Vessela Lieva, Dean of the School of Education at Utah Valley University. I'm also a professor of education and have been a faculty in our teacher preparation program where our students are prepared to provide impactful education for our K-12 schools. And my area of expertise within the educational field has been predominantly mathematics. And this has been guiding my teaching as well as my research in my educational career. I'm privileged now to be serving as the dean of the school and be able to hopefully impact, have new opportunities to impact education in positive ways in that role.
Thank you, Dean. I'm going to have our wonderful student, Katelyn, introduce herself, and please.
Okay, great. So I'm Katelyn Muro. My pronouns are she, her. I am currently a student at UVU in the special education program with a minor in autism. I also am the senator for the School of Education, so I just work with the student council and represent student voice, and I'm an aspiring teacher.
That's great. Thank you very much for bringing the voice of the prospective educators to this conversation. I really looking forward to hearing from you today. And last but not least, Dr. Fawson, Parker.
Thank you, Baldomero. I'm a faculty member and professor in the School of Teacher Education at Utah State University. I'm also hold the M. Eccles Jones Endowed Chair in Early Education within the college here. I direct the Center for the School of the Future, which has a statutory mission within the state to drive improvement and opportunity in education. And so we have a focus on really impacting increased learning opportunities for children within the public school system. We do that work in collaboration with traditional public schools, charter schools, our Utah State Board of Education, and legislators as well. I'm a former elementary school teacher and also a former academic program department chair and college dean of education.
Thank you very much to the four of you, and I appreciate, as I mentioned, I appreciate your time and resources that you're going to be able to provide and share. So let's dive right into quality of education, the Sustainable Development Goal number 4. It reads, ensure inclusive and equitable quality of education. And I'm going to start with Dean Lieva, and then feel free, everyone, to share or to add to the conversation. It has been mandated by the member states of the United Nations, United States included, obviously, to ensure an inclusive and equitable quality of education. Where are we? How are we doing? Have we seen any progress from the past 10 years till now? What can we say in relations to what are we doing when it comes to improving quality, as well as to make sure that we have an inclusive and open education for all?
Thank you, Baldomero. This is a very extensive and multi-layered goal that has multiple perspectives, as indicated even by the targets identified for the goal itself. So I'm going to open the conversation with bringing 3 perspectives into it. One of them is in terms of access to education, student access on the continuum from preschool and early childhood education through a college career and beyond. Also looking at the meaning of what are credentials and stackable credentials, meaningful credentials that individuals could earn along their educational career that are going to provide them the pathway into a productive lifetime. And also a part of the goal itself, the idea of lifelong learning. So I would like to just give a few perspectives from our own institution and the ways that these perspective has transpired in our own development as an institution, and that is providing a certain level of that educational career to our students. UVU is an institution that is proud of its integrated mission, which is us providing education on what would be considered in the US a level of education with a community college perspective, and also a university with a variety of programs that include bachelor's degrees, associate degrees, and master level education for individuals. So that wide range of offerings is really closely related with the notion of student access, and in what ways students could become members of an educational community depending on where they are in terms of their educational goals, in terms of their life goals, and in what ways that trajectory of education could be extended for them. Utah Valley University is also an open access institution that is aligned with our overall mission, and also giving individuals opportunities to have access to education in a unique way. That also transpires in our ability to provide meaningful credentials that are giving the individual opportunity to start and develop their educational career according to their need, to their desire, and to their ability to progress in their learning and development as an individual. And the idea of lifelong learning being embedded in this goal is an essential one for providing equitable and inclusive education in ways that education is not does not end. Education should be provided in ways that are accessible to individuals at any point of their lifetime, with a variety of opportunities for them to learn, grow, develop, and achieve their personal goals in ways that make them feel and apply themselves as a productive member of society.
Thank you for that preamble and an introduction. I think that is remarkable what you're sharing. And I believe that institutions like Utah Valley University and I imagine as Utah State University here within the state of Utah, we are very careful and we are very conscientious on the process, on the program, and how to make sure that our prospective educators are well prepared and well trained, and that we are an open gate for anyone that wants to continue and further their studies. We're looking at a K through 16 plus educational experience. As we speak on education, I've always heard and read, and I actually had the opportunity to travel to Finland, but Finland is notorious for their quality of education. And I would like to ask our guest, Anu, what makes Finland so special when it comes to providing good quality in education?
Well, that's a big question. How much time do we have?
just take a few minutes.
There are, and this is something that we really should also think a little bit more, but there are several things. One of those is the teacher education. We have it in our universities and it's really tough to get in. So we have many applicants and it's hard to get in, and we have entrance examinations in order to get in teacher education. That is something. And we would like to also think that the quality of the teacher education is at least good. It could be even better, but we are enhancing the quality of the teacher education also. But also it's the whole society also has influence on that. Teachers are valued in the society, and also kind of the education is also valued. So it's not just about the teachers, it's about the society itself also.
Did you think that we can learn, Parker and Vessela, from that experience when we talk about the role that educators play in society? And I remember last time I was in Finland at the Ministry of Education, and an individual just indicated at that meeting that, well, we allow the teachers to do their job. They're professionals, and who are we as government agencies to regulate all the standards and everything else that's happening, where we can trust our educators? Where are we when it comes to trusting our educators in order to improve the quality of education in the state? Parker, Vessela?
Well, I would like to think we're making efforts or making progress in that regard. However, I know that over the past decade, we've seen a decline of 35% plus in terms of enrollments in our educational programs. So embedded in that may be some perception issues that we need to address on a number of levels around the profession. Maybe I could step back. I think in regards to this question, certainly we can learn things from other nations around the world on how they're really drilling down on the status of the profession of education, but at the same time drilling down on the impact of the profession. I don't think anybody would disagree that education is a critical factor in producing opportunity among a society's population, and the degree to which we educate children and students well to a large degree plays out in what kind of opportunity and flourishing individuals are able to experience as they move through life. So I do think this is a topic of great import, and we haven't gotten all the answers related to this issue yet, but I do think we need to keep thinking about how do we increase the status of the profession while at the same time increasing the outcome that students experience as a result. Back to your first question of Dean Ilieva, I think if you look at this sustainable development goal, certainly part of an equitable education is do individuals have access to education? Can they physically participate or virtually participate in education. Probably the bigger question that we're facing, or challenge that we're facing now, is once we get individuals access to the educational system, how do we ensure that they actually benefit from that access? I know the 2018 World Development Report hit this topic pretty hard and said it's not just an issue of access, it's really an issue of learning. When students are in the school, are they learning at a high level so they actually can animate that learning into opportunity as they move through life? So certainly for me, this is probably a big issue, a bigger issue than just the access issue, although I can't achieve higher learning if I don't have the access piece in place.
Excellent. I would like to ask Katelyn a question, or a student. We're discussing quality in education. How has been your experience? I mean, did you feel that you are receiving all the tools, the essential elements that you need in order to make a difference in a classroom as you move forward and become an educator?
I would say for the most part, definitely. I am a huge fan of Utah Valley University, and I don't think I've been in one classroom in my program that we haven't talked about like diversity and inclusion, about the importance of quality education. And as we were all just discussing this, I thought of so many things that I've been told as part of my training now that will help me. And I think there's so many parts and moving components to education that I think it's really important to focus on what we're doing well and improve on that. I think it's really easy to look at the things that we need to improve on, and obviously that's important as well. But there's so many great things that are going on right now. The training that I'm receiving is super beneficial, and just knowing how, like Dr. Fawson was saying, like giving students access to technology is one step, but the other step is making sure that enough, and also that it matches the culture that we're teaching, and how that those two together really are going to work to increase quality education for all.
Thank you. You know, currently we're living a different scenario, as we all know. COVID has really hit hard, not only the socioeconomics and the politics, but certainly the education component. We are experiencing a different brand of education, and which we are optimistic that somehow, somewhere is working. Children need to learn, children need to be educated, and despite the challenges that we have faced, has been remarkable to witness what nations around the globe, as well as what has happened locally, how educators have become experts in the field of distant learning per se, or online learning. With that in mind, we spoke about having access to education, and we have been able to do a great job, I consider, within the academic institution to open these doors for individuals to gaining an education. However, we bring a lot of students in, but not too many endured. And as you all know, one of the big issues that even at this academic institution, and probably in Finland, it will be interesting to hear your voice there as well, Anu. One of the major concern is what can we do to increase our graduation rates? And I know that we have been tasked by the legislature, and I imagine that Utah State, as well as other academic institutions throughout the state, that is a concerning issue. And it happens to be one of the key indicators in goal number 4, that we should work on increasing graduate rates, these graduation rates. I'm going to start with you, Katelyn, as a student. What do you think is happening that students are not completing their education?
I think, especially today, a big component of that can be setbacks with COVID-19. But apart from that, one of the things I am super passionate about is foster care and education, and the relationship between those two systems and organizations. And the dropout rate is generally 3 times higher for students in foster care, and then only 3% of students that are in foster care then go on to get a degree of higher education. And I think it's a really good indicator of how we're educating the ones that are most vulnerable in our society. Those are usually the people that come from diverse backgrounds and are underprivileged, and they're also very transient. So I think part of that is one of the things that us as teachers can do better is understanding how to make deep connections with students. One of the greatest indicators of how a student will do is how connected they feel with the professor. So while it's super important to know how to teach something, it's also not talked about enough, but just as or more important to make sure we have deep connections and classrooms that each student feels safe in.
Deans, both Parker and Vessela, what are your thoughts? I mean, what can we do? Is it a concern, this decrease in graduation?
Well, underlying the question is, what does a college education do for an individual? And the evidence is pretty clear. Probably doesn't matter too much across the globe. Certainly in the US, it's clear that the more education an individual receives, the better opportunities they have in life, perhaps socially, but also financially. So I think this is definitely an important marker for us to think about. Probably the initial step that institutions have to consider is, what is our goal around completion? You know, and if we set a robust goal that we genuinely work towards, there's some possibility that we'll actually achieve that. We've seen that happen in the high school graduation rates in the US as a goal was set for 90% of students to graduate high school. We've come very close to that in the country. So I think it starts there. But then the other piece that is a challenge for us in our higher ed institutions is, once we set that goal, how do we reach out and think about, one, recruiting, but the other is, if we're recruiting students who perhaps are non-traditional students, how do we rethink our programming to actually meet those students part way on that journey to education? One example of this that we're working on as a center in collaboration with a school district here in our state is to say, if a school district hires an individual as a tutor or as a paraprofessional, these are individuals who have already demonstrated a commitment to the profession and want to be helping children. In many cases, those are individuals who don't have a college degree. So how can we design our programming around their needs? Perhaps evening coursework or more online options so they can access those when they have time available. But then also looking at competency. What competencies are they already possessing that should be counted towards university credit, so they aren't having to double dip on areas that they already have some level of expertise in. So just as one example of really rethinking some of the ways that we capture students without them having to give up their income and perhaps create a deep hardship upon their family, to have to quit a job so they can go finish their degree. So I think these are things that we have to be considering to really impact that outcome.
I know, is this a concern in Finland when it comes to graduation? Do we have a lot of students that enter into the system, but they don't complete?
Yeah. In general, the situation in Finland is good. We have achieved the targets for completion for primary and secondary education. And concerning COVID situation, what is interesting in university education, actually the graduation rates have increased, and that was kind of surprising for us. But still, there are, of course, something to do. And we have been discussing a lot about these NEET youth. Do you know the term? Neither in employment nor in education and training. And that comes the NEET. And for example, in Finland, it's about 13% of the youth that we are concerned. And because of that, we are now having a national extension of compulsory education until the age of 18. So there is a lot of going on in the Finnish education field concerning this.
Vessela, how can we breach that? How can we reach out and become not Finland, but close to Finland?
Well, I believe there are ways for us to consider, and different aspects of this process for us to consider. I'll bring two of those. One of them is removing the barriers along the pathway of the individual to focusing on their learning goals and on the learning outcomes of their educational process. Whether it is something related to having access to courses at the time when an individual is able to commit and focus predominantly on their learning. That would be one thing. Our university has a substantial percentage of our students being what we would label as non-traditional students. So students who are beyond the considered traditional university population between 18 and 25 years. So we have students who are first in their family to be pursuing a degree. We have many students who are working, I believe at least 20% are working 30 plus hours every week. So are we providing them with courses in the evening when they could attend, or maybe early in the morning, so it doesn't conflict with their work responsibilities and maybe family responsibilities too. We also have students who are raising families and who are in conjunction pursuing an educational career, which is something we should support, and removing the barriers in whatever shape and form they may be present for the individual. That would be one thing to consider as an approach to resolving that. And I would also bring into the mix that notion of continuity of education. A student who at the present time may have only the time in the day or the resources to commit to earning a certificate in a certain area should be able to use that learning to advance their education and come and earn an associate degree, and then come and continue that to bachelor's degree, and so on and so on. And we could clearly connect that also with the career of students in the K-12 system, where we also could utilize resources like concurrent education, career and technology education and such, to instill that passion for learning and that understanding that the learning is an ongoing process, and that students will have the opportunity to utilize every step of their learning as a meaningful component of their educational career.
Thank you. That's excellent. I do appreciate that, Vessela, for saying what you were saying. I have a question for the four of you, and it deals with what I consider K or pre-K. Do all girls and boys, both in Utah as well as in Finland, have access to quality early childhood development, care, and pre-primary education? What are some of the successes or challenges in reaching this goal?
The US, we have over 90% access for pre and kindergarten. In Utah, that number probably is a little lower, although there are organizations working actively to remediate this. I think in terms of kindergarten, there is a requirement, or first grade, there's a requirement that children are in schools. Kindergarten, we have probably a higher percentage of children who are accessing kindergarten supports. Preschool in Utah is a little bit more problematic, and it's partly an issue of funding. We're not required to run preschools in the state of Utah. We do have programs like Head Start and other programs that are sponsored by community organizations that are reaching out. I think the challenge underlying this is if you don't invest early in education, you end up paying a cost for that down the road. We know early intervention is critical if students are struggling with, for example, reading and math. as they exit for third grade. It's just really hard to fix that. And then you shut down opportunity as they move through their lives, those individuals. So I think we do a decent job of giving access, certainly to kindergarten and first grade in our state. I would say preschool is a little bit more of a challenge for us for a number of reasons, including funding.
Any other comments?
Just another perspective on that from the viewpoint of the School of Education and us providing early childhood preparation for individuals who engage with that age group of children, and the way we prepare them to really be skilled and have the knowledge and abilities to provide that preparation that is transitioning young children into their learning experiences in the formal school setting. So as a School of Education, that is part of our contribution to that process, preparing individuals, especially in the area of early childhood, to be able to contribute to that development of that population. I'll stop here.
Great. Thank you, Vessela. This is another question for the four of you. What are some of the ways, perhaps in Finland and Utah, that education is provided equally to all women and men, specifically for post-secondary education, including vocational, technical, or even university programs? What are some of the ways that we are providing access to both women and men?
Perhaps some words about Finland at first. There are kind of two issues here. When you think about the access to post-secondary education, the situation in Finland is good. There is a good access rate and completion rate also. But when you think about the gender issue, combining that, in Finland, according to the preliminary national study published in December concerning these SDGs, there were actually two targets that needed additional special kind of issues. And the one was about equality concerning gender disparities. And that is something that is a little bit striking for us, because kind of we think that equality between genders in Finland is in a good situation already. But according to this, and some studies also say that the situation is not so good that we think. So the gender issue is one. And the other actually is the early childhood education. So about that, so that's the second one, we should do more about that. But that would be interesting to hear the situation in Utah.
Well, in the US, if you look at the data, we have, if you look at a vocational degree, it looks like data indicate women are probably accessing that opportunity at a slightly higher rate than men in the US. If you look at a bachelor's degree, that seems to be the trend as well. A higher proportion of women are accessing that. If you jump up to an advanced degree, such as a doctoral degree, that seems to shift. You have a higher proportion of men that seem to be accessing advanced degrees in the US than women. So there's still some areas that need attention, probably in both directions. Certainly in K-12, we see a challenge in K-12 as well in high school graduations in terms of females and males, with females graduating at a higher rate. That could indicate a concern certainly down the road.
Parker, thank you for this comment. I was going to address this issue. What is being done to change this?
there are a variety of pathways to really look at addressing this issue, and it is a continuum that we should be looking at. But one of the topics that was on my mind while I was listening to the other in this panel was the area of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which we tend to label as STEM, where we have the data that these areas may be more male dominated in terms of earning the professional credentials and even entering and being engaged with the content and the subjects during the educational career. So some of the things that we could introduce in the K-12 aspect of learning is really having the engaged type of learning that is introducing all of the members of the classroom community to understanding the aspects of conducting a science experiment or knowing the engineering design in a way that is exciting and that is going to prompt them to continue exploring this in their throughout their education. So really providing opportunities for both boys and girls, men and women, to understand in what ways they personally could be involved in areas that may have really built a reputation to be dominated by the other gender. And you could include here opportunities as different types of, for example, I would give as an example a STEM fair or an engineering week that is being held on UVU's campus, where we collaborate the School of Education and the College of Engineering and Technology, providing those opportunities to explore, to build engagement, and to start building passion towards being involved in some of those areas.
Thank you, Vessela.
Can I comment on that very shortly? That is something that we really share, because the labor market is highly segregated in Finland, and in education we really have to think about this, what we can do for that. So it was really interesting to hear about that.
Excellent.
And
Go ahead.
sorry, I just have a quick comment about that as well. So my sister is also a student at UVU, and she's a biology major, and I'm an education major. So in my cohort, it's predominantly female, and hers, it's a predominantly male cohort. And we've had discussions about this. And one of the things that we've both talked about is how something that would really help this is curriculum that doesn't just represent the stereotypes of what a teacher or what a biologist is, and how this can start, you know, even elementary, high school. It's hard to imagine yourself as something that you've never seen. So if we have more representation in those areas and not just the stereotypical ones, which I think is something that we're improving on, but is always something that I think there's still some way to go in improving that.
You know, this challenge, Baldomero, starts much earlier than university. If you look at outcome data on early literacy and early math proficiency rates, we see that boys tend to have higher rates of proficiency early on in math, and girls have higher proficiency rates early on in reading and writing. And so if you move through the system and never address that early issue, then you have a higher proportion of women who say, well, I'll probably steer into a professional path or an academic path that doesn't require me to dig deeply on the math versus the language, and the same for the man. So I think it's an issue, an equity issue, that isn't just something that should be focused on at the university level. I think we need to dig down deeper into our educational system and say, where does this challenge begin, and how do we make sure every child, whether they're male or female, black or white, come out of third grade with the necessary foundational proficiency capacity to be able to animate opportunity wherever their passion leads them.
Thank you, Parker. I have a question for the four of you, and I hope that our student answers also this question. what is being done to ensure access to all levels of education for the vulnerable, including persons with disabilities, Indigenous people, and children in vulnerable situations? And I refer to the student because you're majoring in special education. It will be interesting to see your perspective and your point of view, and then I welcome any other comments. Again, the question is, and what is being done to ensure access to all levels of education for the vulnerable, including persons with disabilities, Indigenous people, and children in vulnerable situations?
Do you want me to start on that one?
You want to?
Okay. Yeah, so obviously this is something that I care a lot about, being a special ed teacher. And like I said before, I think if you look at foster care, it's just a really good indicator of how we're doing on this, because that's typically the people who are in foster care, or the people that are vulnerable and in minority groups, and something that I also have some personal experience with. And I think that in my classes, honestly, I love the professors at UVU. We've had some great discussions about how we can do better at this, or what we can improve on. And I've also had the opportunity and my role as the senator to talk to the inclusion team that we have about what we can do. And I've had one-on-one discussions about people that struggled going through school with feeling discriminated against, and what we could be doing better. And one of the super simple things that friends in the LGBTQ community have shared with me is just sharing like pronouns at the beginning of class when we introduce, showing that it's like a safe place, is like one of the most simple things I think we can do, but makes a huge impact. And I think it goes back to the representation as well. I think it's really hard to imagine yourself and to connect with curriculum if it's always someone that, or something that doesn't resonate with you. I can't change who I am. I am a cisgender female who's the typical educator. But I can do my best on educating myself about other cultures and how I can incorporate their beliefs and their learning and their traditions into my classroom. I am getting my global intercultural distinction at UVU as well, which is something I'm super grateful for, that they have that as an opportunity here, because this is something that I really don't want to miss the mark on. And I think one of the things that's great about the education I'm receiving is that I think everyone is understanding more of the importance of focusing on this and making sure we're teaching to every student, and not just the curriculum.
Excellent answer. Any other comments from the group?
Well, Katelyn, you very well addressed some of these issues, and thank you for bringing the global intercultural opportunity that exists for students across the university, not only from the School of Education, but it is really one way for us to best understand how to work with diverse populations in ways that are going to be most inclusive and really bring their perspectives as assets to the educational process. So this is the perspective that we're taking in the School of Education, inviting differences in terms of contributions to the educational process. Curriculum has a lot of opportunities to introduce that in the different ways, as well as communities that we could invite to be part of the learning process. And we could continue building that process throughout the educational career, whether it is in the K-12 setting or in the college career. So a perspective of asset-based education is one that could help us move what you just described, Katelyn, to the next level of having representation of multiple groups and populations in our learning and teaching.
Yes, Hannu.
In Finland, if you think about the structural things, laws, curriculum, and things like that, it works pretty well. But what we really need to have is have this kind of equality issues at school level, in everyday life, in practices, in school culture. That is something that we really have to work on. And in order to be able to do that, we really need to have more equality issues in teacher education. And that is something that we have been working on and still progressing.
You know, unfortunately, we're running out of time, but and I had so many other questions to ask, especially on literacy, for example. So we have Parker Fawson, he's an expert in literacy, or even on teacher preparation. I mean, I was going to ask Katelyn, how do you feel? Do you feel you're being prepared? As well as him, what is Finland doing to prepare their educators, which is a model worldwide. And we're so honored that you're with us, Anu, because you represent probably one of the top universities in the nation in Finland in education. So you could be such a great resource for us in helping us understand what to do to ensure quality and equitable education. I have a few questions coming up through the chat room or through the comments book, and unfortunately I'm only going to ask one question, and that is, how can family members support the learners in the family setting?
I would like to just mention one thing: be interested in learning.
Okay, and at both ends, right? As educators as well as the student, right? They have to have that interest.
Yeah.
Great. Any additional comments?
I think that's great advice. I think the degree to which we nurture learning within our families is really powerful. And I think it moves us a little bit farther along than just saying I value education to I value learning within education, which I think is the big challenge we face going forward.
And I would add to this, be passionate about education and use every opportunity to involve the children within the family setting. Just from my perspective of mathematics, make a mathematical problem of everything, even how many pieces of peas there are on the child's plate. So just an example.
That is great. Well, I want to thank you honestly for the input that you have provided today. This program of Taking Action is an opportunity to raise awareness on the quality and education today, and we will continue to address other topics and other goals. I honestly want to thank your time, your expertise, your wisdom, and the opportunity for Katelyn as a student to share her thoughts and views. And I keep hearing all the time the shout out about UVU's educational program is the best and everything else. I'm happy to hear that. And I would imagine that if I would have asked a student from Utah State University, they'd probably be saying the same thing, because I consider that we're doing an okay job, but we still have a lot of things to progress and to continue, and having partners in Finland and other parts of the world to help us understand what education is all about and how we can enhance and improve it is a plus. So I thank you, the four of you. I thank you, Anu, for joining us. I know it's late in the evening there, and I know the Finns tend to go to bed early. So thank you for being with us today, and for everyone that has been able to make this a successful event today. For your information, next Tuesday on January 19th at 11 o'clock, we will welcome Senator Curtis Bramble. He is the chairman of the International Relations Committee at the state legislature, and he will be our guest at the Global Dialogues. But our next Taking Action will take place on Wednesday, always Wednesdays, January 27th, as we address goal number 11, which is building sustainable cities and communities. And the panelist for that day will be Madame Jackie Biskupski. She is the former Salt Lake City mayor, as well as the director and coordinator of the UVU sustainability programs here on campus, Genevieve Richards, as well as a faculty in the UVU Earth Science Department, Dr. Hilary Hungerforth, as well as a student. Her name is Reagan Whitlightly. She is a geology major. So if you want to see the full schedule of Global Dialogues or Taking Action events, or even previous video programs, simply access our website at www.uvu.edu/global. Again, I want to thank you, panelists. I want to thank audience for following these proceedings and those that will follow later on through our YouTube channel. Again, as we sign off today, make sure you choose to be a global citizen. And thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate you.